Print, email, Facebook, Twitter. More global protest against homophobia has special meaning in regional and rural Australia. People around the world are today marking what is billed as the single most important date for LGBTI communities to mobilise on a large scale. Despite being celebrated in more than 120 countries, the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia and Biphobia, Idaho, does not receive a great deal of attention in Australia. But for people like Chris Stevens, a Dubbo resident featured in the ABC short film Pride Out West, the day is an important part of the LGBTI community's ongoing struggle for acceptance. I think it's something that the community is trying to focus on as a positive way of educating about bullying and homophobia, depression and verbal abuse, all sorts of things that impact on gay, lesbian, transgender youth as they're growing up, Ms. Stevens said. It's a day to show your solidarity, really, in the workplace, in the community, anywhere you happen to be on the day. I'm hoping that awareness grows and that each year more and more people know about this and can help promote it and celebrate it within their communities. Rapid change came on slow. Ms. Stevens has witnessed an enormous shift in attitudes towards LGBTI people over the course of her lifetime, most notably the emphatic result of last year's same-sex marriage postal survey, she said. Dubbo, where she and her wife Busy Mason, herself a 78er, grew up before returning to settle down some 40 years later, was a pretty difficult place for young people up until the turn of the century. Busy and I were both in high school in the early 70s, and I didn't feel comfortable about telling anybody who I really was, she said. And it's very interesting now, having gone to some school reunions, to find out that I wasn't the only gay in the village. There's a whole group of us that were all at school together but didn't realize, because we couldn't seek support from anyone because we were too afraid to say anything. Media player, space to play, M to mute, left and right to seek, 0008:1000:0008:10 cyberbullied to the brink of suicide in a nightmarish echo of her own adolescence. Miss Stevens, then still not publicly out, watched on as her daughter was driven to suicidal despair as she grew up in Dubbo in the 1990s. Then in Year 9, Miss Stevens' daughter was forced to contend with a new technological phenomenon, the internet. She was cyberbullied and outed online and all sorts of things, Ms. Stevens said. And I went through all of that with her. It was a horrific time, and she actually became depressed and tried to commit suicide as a result of what was happening to her at school. And cyberbullying was quite new in the 90s, so I got no support from the school. They told me it wasn't happening in the school, it was happening outside, so there was nothing they could do. So an awareness has grown in the last 20 years. Keeping it local. Ms. Stevens believes days like Idaho can lead to young LGBTI people staying on in regional and rural communities rather than leaving town the instant they finish school, as her wife and daughter both did. I think it's become more acceptable for young people to stand up and say, "This is me, this is who I am," she said. It's still not easy, but because they show that strength of character, then the wider community, there's 2 degrees of separation, and you know someone who's gay, you've got a family member who's gay, and you come to realize that because they're more out there and visible now, that you accept them. You can see they deserve to be treated as equals and not to be bullied and not to be fearful of losing friendships and families over something that they're really got no control over. Ms. Stevens said events such as Dubbo's Pride March, spearheaded by Nicholas Steep, whose own confronting story is featured in Pride Out West, also help to increase the confidence of LGBTI people and the way they are perceived by their neighbors. Good on Nick for staying in town after what he went through, which was similar to my daughter, and there are other young people that have stuck around and made a difference, she said. Being high profile, people see them, people see that they're doing good within the community. It's like critical mass, it just got to a point, and that's nationwide, where people are going, yes, everyone should be equal, and approaching it from that perspective. Print, email, Facebook, Twitter.